So welcome. My name is Lynne Nygaard. I'm the director of the Center for Mind, Brain, and Culture, and I'm also faculty in the Department of Psychology. And I am delighted to have a conversation with Patricia Marsteller, Pat Marsteller, who is now a emeritus professor of practice in biology and also the director of the Hughes Science Initiatives. So Pat, welcome. Thank you for having a conversation with us. I wanted to start, you came to Emory in 1990, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and so could you tell me a little bit about your trajectory, how you came to be, sort of get your PhD in zoology, but become a professor in biology, and sort of how did you arrive at Emory? How did you get where you
are? Boy, that's a complicated story in and of itself. I did an undergraduate degree a long time ago, and then I was out almost 10 years before I went back to do a master's and then a PhD. Mm-hmm. And during that time, I was got married, raised a child up to about 5, et cetera, et cetera. Right. When I went back to grad school, I had a 5-year-old and had just gotten a divorce. Ooh.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I did, I did work in animal behavior for my master's with alligators. That always fascinated me for a little bit. And then I went to the University of Florida to do my PhD. And I went to work on parental care and behavior in frogs because there's such really cool little systems where there's male parental care. But it turned out that woman that I went to work with decided to do something different and moved. And so I ended up without an advisor and was walking through the parking lot one day. I think this is actually an interesting story for grad students and postdocs, right? And the department had just announced that we would not have funding for the summer. Oh. But I ran into my professor from a genetics class and he went, I got my grant. And I went, and you need an RA, don't you?
Yeah.
And so I switched to quantitative genetics of life history evolution.
That's quite a shift.
Quite a switch, right?
Yeah.
And then, after that, my trajectory went, so I met a new husband and got married, and he was a little bit ahead of me in his PhD program. So he was doing postdocs and I kind of followed him around while he did postdocs for a while and worked at a whole bunch of different kinds of institutions, right? Like St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas, University of South Carolina, where I was a teaching assistant, Benedict College, where I helped to run a minority biomedical research program. And then I got a tenure track position at Newberry College and got early tenure. And then I saw this ad that said, Emory has this position open, a grant-funded position for somebody to come and help people develop new curriculum modules, develop an undergraduate research program, and do work with underrepresented students. And I went like, oh yeah, that's what I've been looking for forever. Of course, it was not tenure track. As a matter of fact, it didn't even have a faculty appointment when they advertised it. But I took a chance and negotiated a faculty appointment non-tenure track with that 5-year grant project. And 30 some odd years later, I'm still here and still doing all kinds of actual work around diversity, equity, and inclusion, not only at Emory, but nationally. I got to do a lot of really cool things. So for example, I don't even know if you know this, but I was one of the co-founders of NBB. I was on the project committee that established the neuroscience and behavioral biology major. And I also was one of the prime pushers for and helped to write the grant for the Center for Behavioral Neuroscience, which involved Emory, Georgia Tech, Georgia State, Clark Atlanta, Morehouse, Spelman, etc., in a union to try and create undergraduate majors and graduate programs that united neuroscience and behavior and biology. So, pulling from psychology, from biology, from neuroscience specialties, even from computer science, because there's a lot of interest in computational neuroscience. So that was actually a really fun project to get started.
And that center was quite long-lived. I mean,
they last for they can last for 10 years.
Yeah.
Emory's participation morphed over time because when the initial PI for that project, Tom Insel from Yerkes, moved to NIMH, Emory was unfortunately in interim president, interim provost, interim dean. And so we lost the lead on it to Georgia State. But we still stayed involved as much as we possibly could, but we lost the lead on the grant, which was too bad, but oh well, life happens. Training administrators is one of the projects that, one of my Emory projects for a long time.
Well, now you have been co-PI and director on multiple grants at Emory and beyond. And I thought I would just, mention a few. You were the Associate Dean of Undergraduate Research and Education for the last several years. But also the co-PI and director of the PRISM K through 12 initiative.
That was one of my favorite projects of all time.
Yeah. And I had a graduate student that was involved in that program. And so why was that one of your favorites? I mean, was it this pairing of,
So it was really an amazing project, right? I mean, it pulled graduate students from any STEM broadly conceived major and paired them with high school or middle school teachers to develop new curriculum modules around problem-based learning and case-based learning, which is another one of my expertise areas that I do workshops in. And there was just exciting change, right? It really, in the graduate students themselves, as they became more interested in education and more connected with how to do community-based projects, in the teachers and in the students that we influence. And for the first 4 or 5 years, we also had undergraduates were allowed to be involved. At the second round of the proposals, they dropped that, which is too bad because I still keep in touch with, I'm in touch with every single graduate student who was in that program. Almost all the undergrads and most of the teachers, right? And, just yesterday I had a chance to congratulate one of the graduate students from early on in the project, who is now moving to Michigan State Center for Evolution as a full professor with an endowed chair. Right. Some of my group, one of them runs a foundation grants program based on his research that he was in. One is a faculty member at Oxford College. I mean, there's they're everywhere, right? And
and reflects the ways in which this kind of training and this kind of these kinds of programs sort of plant seeds that carry into a variety of different careers.
And what we did with it early on is, in addition, is we established a special meeting time a week where we focused on professional development and where do you want to go and how do you find the right job application or the right postdoc if that's what you are interested in, etc. That helped a lot of people rethink their perspectives on where they want to go and like I said, some of them are one institutions, some of them are at community colleges, some are at Morehouse and Spelman. There's even one in the Emory School of Public Health. So they're all over the place. And two actually decided to do high school teaching after doing that program because they just felt they made an enormous impact. Right. And they also learned about social justice initiatives that they might not have thought about if they hadn't worked in, say, Atlanta public schools,
right?
And begun some projects there. So it is one of my favorites, even though I've also done 7 HHMI grants over the years and enormous amounts of interesting curriculum change through that.
Right.
That also allowed me to have undergraduates and graduate students and postdocs work with faculty on new curriculum modules and work to develop new classes. And that was just really, really exciting and fun too.
I was curious, I was looking over all the different kinds of courses you've taught over these years. Some of them firmly, seem, in the biological sciences, and some seem to bring in this, your ideas in addition to your workshops and your grant related activities and institution building and those activities. How do you see that, juxtaposition of your kind of your scholarly interests, right? Your identity, if you will, as a biologist, and this other, all this other work that you're doing in inclusion, just, social justice,
Yeah, so I've always been interested in social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and have always included it in my work. Even when I was in grad school, in the summers, I taught in a special transition to college program for underrepresented students, for example, and helped develop the curriculum for that. I am quasi first generation, like my mother and my father went up little bits of college, but neither of them finished.
Right.
I'm the oldest of 11 children.
I did not know that.
Oldest of 11, yeah.
Yeah.
That probably is why I'm such a roughshod person to deal with on on some levels, right? But
you got to get this thing moving, right?
It definitely gives you the push. So there's actually 5 boys after me before another girl.
Oh,
so right. I also learned to curse early, from the boys. It took me a while, but I eventually learned how to educate them so that they could help out around the house too.
Right.
Right? Because in that time, boys were not expected to do anything. So if you're the oldest girl, guess what? You're the chief babysitter, cook, bottle washer, yard worker, etc.
Right.
So it gives you some training for leadership, but I don't know that I would recommend it as a solution for anybody. Oldest of 11.
Right.
But so I've always had real interest in that. I've always had interest in matching the diversity of our faculty with the growing diversity of our students. So that's given me some other impetus to work in those areas. But I also think that a lot of our college introductory courses and high school too, courses in the life sciences tend to focus on content, but not application, and not where that content can take us. And I think we're doing a disservice to all of our students, both non-majors and majors, by not making our classes have parts of them at least that focus on what what can you really do with this material? So, we have at Emory, for example, we have so many health science students. There are so many health disparities out there, both in treatment and in medical care and in diagnosis and in the way people are included in clinical trials. And we don't make that part of our courses. Why not? Right? There are so many people who are discoverers who come from other than white male groups, but our textbooks wouldn't look like that.
Right.
We can include others and make our disciplines way more welcoming to everyone if we could feature diverse scientists and their data. And there's no reason why you can't do that even with content, right?
Right. And
there's amazing ways.
It's going to be better for the science and society in general.
Because as you bring more voices to the table, you ask better questions.
Yeah,
you get more and better answers and approaches. And I just think that we do all of our students a disservice if we don't find ways to include more practical kinds of things. I also am a firm believer in citizen science, right? So I do think that even our non-majors should understand how the process of science works and how science is important to their community and to their decisions in life, and how they educate their children, and whether they I don't know, wear masks and
for example,
get vaccinated.
Right.
Like all of those kinds of decisions are important to all people, right?
That's
At
right.
all
That's right.
kinds of levels, but
but
the kinds of courses across the nation that most science departments teach don't address that very well.
Right. I was curious, you have this wealth of experience, and you also have this, if I may be so bold, a little bit of a long view, at least somewhat of a long view, in the sense that this has been, these are questions and issues and work that you've been doing for some time. What is, and particularly revolving around sort of these, equity, inclusion, diversity, social justice within the STEM fields, the inclusion of women and individuals from underrepresented groups. What are the, do you see any progress, first of all? I'll start there. Maybe I should end there.
Well, I don't know. I see a lot of progress.
Yeah.
I see, so it comes in waves.
Right.
Sometimes the progress comes in waves. And I think the crisis that we saw in this country over race relations in recent years has really precipitated some major changes at Emory and across the nation in many institutions' approaches to diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives.
Right.
But I see some blockages too, right? So I do see progress in diversifying the faculty, especially for women. The Chronicles issue for, that covers all of that came out yesterday, and there is significant progress in the last 10 years on the ranks, at all ranks for women faculty, less so for diversifying the faculty, but in some institutions, there's been tremendous changes there too. So, we are seeing progress on those initiatives because of student voices and because of other protests. We're seeing a lot of changes at the undergraduate level in certain disciplines, but we're also seeing this horrible pushback, right, from certain governors and assorted other pressures, board of trustees even, on those initiatives, that there's still, a lot of challenges. At the curriculum level, there's been a lot of progress. in recent years. So there's a number of NSF funded projects that actually push this, and a couple of NIH ones that push these kinds of issues for curricular change. There's a group called Scientist Spotlights that was originally funded by NSF and now is funded by a NIH SEPA award that really identifies different scientists and has figured out ways to introduce it easily into classrooms and showed significant change in student understanding of what it means to be a scientist and what a scientist looks like. And I have a group that started about a year and a half ago that's focusing on new scientist spotlights with data nuggets, right? So the incorporation of the data of the scientists and their papers so that it's easily transferable into curricular modules. And a woman that was my lead collaborator on that wrote a grant as part of her working group this year, and it got funded 2 weeks ago. So
congratulations.
There's going to be a 5-year grant for Sue Ann Yang and Rachel Pigg as the co-PIs, the lead PIs, to fund a research coordination network to look at the impact of that and to create lots of new spotlights across STEM disciplines. So, and I have a working group that's working on that too, and it is now pulling people from biology, chemistry, physics, and math to look at different disciplinary spotlights that one can do and incorporate data from those scientists. And one of the foci is to focus on younger scientists because they're closer in age to the students that you want to actually impact and have them see different things. So we're going to do grad students, postdocs, and junior faculty.
Right. So, you know, the folks who will really be shaping the field.
Yeah.
The fields and educational and other institutions.
So that, I mean, those are some of the exciting things I've been doing in the last 2 years. So
right. So I was wondering what, I mean, again, given your wealth of experience, what are the main sticking points? Where are the biggest obstacles?
The faculty reward system at R1 institutions. That does not focus at all. Okay, I'm not going to say not at all, but it has a lot of emphasis on research productivity in a very narrowly defined fashion, and does not really either reward or foster new curriculum developments for faculty. Now, not that there aren't centers for faculty development and excellence at Emory and other places, but that is not part of the dominant push on junior, and young faculty before tenure, and certainly not after tenure either. So some people do it in spite of that, but a lot of people are not rewarded for it at all. And then, and that's not just at R1 institutions, because there's been a huge move for all levels of institutions, even community colleges, to push their faculty to do research and to reward them for that while, taking their teaching commitments not as seriously. And also another big barrier is that a lot of people involved in this work are women and underrepresented minorities who are also already overburdened. Right. So we're trying to use the term counter stereotypical scientists instead of underrepresented.
That's yes. Oh, yes.
It's a lot more inclusive.
Right.
And it's anyway, we're trying to use that terminology in our language, and we'll see where that takes us. But the time is another barrier, right? To develop new materials, you need set aside time.
Right.
And you need collaborators often, right? So
Right.
the model we've been working on is a faculty mentoring network that's set up by a group of people who are interested, and then find a time to meet, but they're from all over the country, right? So they're not at the institution, they're working with a group of other interested people that want to do the same kind of work, but not necessarily at their institution. So we also found we had to add in how to be a change agent at your institution as part of our faculty mentoring networks, because, you know, often people will go, but yeah, but, you know, I'm only one of the people that teach in the introductory biology series. And if I make a change, that won't be, you know, viewed well by my colleagues. And so we've had to find ways to help people develop a skill set for building collaborators within their institution, as well as having this network of really like-minded people on the outside, right? And then find rewards for that, right? So one of the things that we've done with our faculty mentoring networks is we've started asking, who would you like us to send a letter describing how wonderful you are to?
Nice.
Dean, your department chair, your provost, just let us know, we'll do it.
Right. And it also gives, you know, like-minded folks at different, each institution sort of settles into a kind of a culture, I think, maybe. And again, you know far more about this than I do, and you end up being in your own institution's culture. So just to have a window on what people are doing at other places and what's possible or not possible, or those kinds of things. Is
so another cool thing I did this year was with the Accelerating Systemic Change Network. And I am one of the 3 co-chairs of the Social Justice, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Working Group. And one of the things we did this spring is we did a feature on recruiting diverse faculty. So we had conversations once a month for from January through June. And we had deans and provosts and faculty from community colleges, R1s, liberal arts institutions, R2s, right? Like all over the place. And it was so cool for them to hear how similar their situations were, but how different those situations were. And, you know, and work through some of those issues about how to think about recruiting diverse faculty to your institution type, and work through some of the data and questions to get there, right? And I think that's what the faculty mentoring networks do for curriculum development too, is they allow people to see the similarities and the differences between their institution types, right? So, you know, we have everywhere from community colleges to Princeton in our current working groups. Right.
So Pat, I'm hearing here that you are you have transitioned to just another, you know, realm of work, right? You haven't retired.
Yeah, just most of it unpaid, but
congratulations.
But all of it involves things like mentoring and diversity, inclusion, and excellence, right? So
yeah, so I was wondering, in addition to the initiatives and working groups that you've mentioned kind of throughout our conversation, just a summary of the kind of buckets of things, if that's the right metaphor, that you're up to now. So what are you working on now? What are you thinking about? What are you thinking about? You know, what's the near future in terms, or far future in terms of where you see yourself going in your kind of your work and your work life?
So I should say, first of all, that I'm still partial Emory employee because I'm paid off the IMSD grant and a grant for undergraduate research with Jeff Sands in the School of Medicine, and a case-based grant that Kristen Frenzel and I do from neuroscience, right? So I have 3 grants still at Emory for a while yet.
And IMSD is
Initiative for Maximizing Student Development, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So Keith Wilkinson and I started this a long time ago. It took us a couple of tries to get it funded, but it is an NIH grant that fosters diversity in graduate programs by including undergraduates and graduate students.
Yes.
Right. So, and it's been running now since 2013, although the leadership has changed several times.
Right, right.
But I'm still one of the co-PIs on that. And we have supported graduate students in DBBS and the School of Public Health and psychology and I think, and chemistry.
Right.
So across the years. And undergraduates in any of those disciplines as well. And what we did was we created a professional development class that includes both the grad students and the undergrads. And a while back, we decided we'd invite people who were not funded by the grant. So for the last 5 years, even though our grant only funds 12 undergraduates and 6 graduate students, we have 70 to 80 people attending our class every week, all spring and etc. And so we've been doing some really great work with that. But we also had a third part of our grant, which was faculty mentoring. So we established the Atlanta Society of Mentors out of that, which Eddie Morgan leads, and Nicole Gerardo is one of the co-leads on it. And we have actually pushed through that all new GDBVS faculty must participate in a mentoring series. And we have been conducting mentoring workshops fall and spring every year for the last 7 years. And we do a series of 8 issues on mentoring for faculty. So that is also something I'm really, really proud of that we have put in place here, and it will continue well beyond where I go, right? Anyway, sorry, sidetrack, but
no, I wanted to highlight that. That's a real, I've had students
I'm definitely continuing in that area. I see one of my missions as to nurture and mentor grad students, postdocs, and young faculty in their career development. So part of the BioQuest Curriculum Consortium that I've been a part of for nearly 30 years, or maybe 30 years, is we developed a philosophy that part of what we do as a community is mentor our colleagues and help them in their development, right? So that's really a part of where I see myself contributing. I'm helping with that organization as it has become a 501(c)(3). I used to be chair of the board, but now I'm chief volunteer or something. I don't have a title.
Volunteer officer,
chief volunteer. So I help people write grants for those kinds of things. I help people figure out where their pathway best fits and what kinds of work they could do and get credit for and how to do that. So I view that as part of what I plan to continue. It is with them that I'm doing most of the work on social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Right.
Although I'm also working with the Accelerating Systemic Change Network, which is another one that's going to be 501(c) one of these days. And a group of collaborators. So one of the ones that I just got elected to the board of the Center, which is Science for Civic Engagement, right? Which really crosses all of those boundaries really well. And they too were, long-term funded by NSF, and then NSF doesn't fund you for very long for curriculum initiatives. And then they had to go to 501(c) because their institution didn't pick them up and blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to be on their board. I've been doing a lot of work with the American Association for the Advancement of Science. I was the what do they call it? Chairperson, I guess, of the section on education for a couple of years. And now I've been elected to their, and have been serving on their CoStep group, which is a group that does awards in the area of science communication and looks at NSF policies on science and engagement with the public. So I've been really, really active with that group too, and plan to continue as long as they want me to, right? As long as I have enough energy left. But yeah, so I'm plenty busy. I'm not getting paid very much, but I'm plenty busy.
Right. Well, you know,
and I forgot case-based learning. So I've been doing case-based and problem-based learning for 25 or 30 years. And I am currently part of four grant initiatives on case-based learning, one in the neurosciences, one on high throughput data and biology. I don't do well on the high throughput part, but I do
the biology good.
I do the help them think about cases and how to develop them. One on it's called a molecular case net, and it's biology and chemistry brought together to look at molecules and visualize them, but in the context of real people, and real world connections, right? So that's gonna those all go on for a couple more years.
Okay, so clearly busy.
Clearly busy, yeah.
As
a matter of fact, my husband goes, "Are you sure you retired? Because you're working harder than you did before." Right.
Yeah,
dude.
So one thing that we would like to do is to I'll point people in this conversation to links to some of these organizations. So as a kind of a resource, one mini resource center, and websites and those sorts of things. But I'm just so pleased to get a chance to talk to you, Pat, and, have called upon you over the time I've been at Emory to help me in a million ways. So I benefited from your mentoring and all this work as well.
And one of these days we're going to get one of those grants funded, man.
Yeah, exactly. Keep trying.
You got to follow the, if at first you don't succeed thing, because I have one NSF grant that I submitted 5 times before I got it through.
Right.
And the original IMSD, I'm pretty sure we did 3 times.
Right.
Takes
just like
try again.
Here I am again. Here we are again. Right, that sort of thing. But thank you so much, and I really appreciate you speaking to us and to the Center for Mind, Brain, and Culture. And best of luck in all these endeavors. Right, you won't need it, but
I may recruit some of you.
Yeah, exactly.
To all of these endeavors, right?